The following is a presentation of The Day.
Live from the historic Garde Arts Center in downtown New London, we welcome you to the 20th District State Senate debate. Tonight's debate features Republican State Senator Paul Formica and his Democrat challenger, Martha Marx. We now take you to the moderator for tonight's debate, the editorial page editor of the Day newspaper, Paul Chauanier.
Welcome to our live stream debate in the 20th District race for State Senate. My name is Paul Chauanier, and I'm the opinion editor for the Day newspaper. I am moderating the debate and joined by fellow panelist Lee Elsey, morning talk show host of 94.9 News Now and a Day columnist, and by Day staff writer and editorial board member Julia Bergman. Taking part in tonight's debate are Republican candidate Senator Paul Formica and Democrat Martha Marx. The Garde has agreed to host this and 2 additional state Senate debates. There is no live audience. We only have enough people in attendance for production purposes. We are utilizing social distancing and everyone is masked except those directly participating in the debate. Martha Marx has opted to wear a mask during the debate. The 20th District consists of the towns of Basra, East Lyme, Montville, New London, Old Lyme, Old Saybrook, Salem, and Waterford. Under our debate format, the candidate responding to a question will have 1 minute to answer. The opponent will then get 90 seconds to respond and rebut, and the candidate who originally took the question 30 seconds to sum up. Questions will alternate. We begin with 1 minute opening statements, and we start with Martha Marx.
Hi, I'd like to thank the Day, the League of Women Voters, and the Garde and all the technicians here for hosting tonight. I have been a nurse for 35 years. As a nurse, our number one responsibility is advocacy. I am a tenacious, fierce advocate, and that is one way I know that I will be an excellent state senator if you elect me to go to Hartford. I have also been a union leader for 20 years with AFT Local 5119. Every home health aide and nurse that I represent will tell you that no one has their back like I do. I've got them fair wages, safe working conditions, and I will continue to always fight for them. We are on a public health crisis and an economical crisis. I am a fierce advocate on the front lines. We need to keep our 20th District safe. I am the person who can take us there to make sure that we recover from this COVID-19. I hope that after this hour you realize I am the best candidate to be your next state senator.
Thank you. Senator Formica, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening. Thank you to the Day, Paul and Julia, and Lee Elsey and the League of Women Voters for their work in organizing this debate this evening, and to Steve and Jeannie Siegel and this great Garde Arts Theater for hosting us tonight. I look forward to the opportunity to discuss issues and solutions and to paint a clear picture of why I remain the best choice to return to Hartford as your state senator. I have continually focused on service to the people of the 20th District and our state, especially during these very difficult past few months, where concentrating on health and safety and navigating overburdened state agencies has been our primary focus. There has been a campaign like no other. People throughout our state are suffering, scared, and in need of experienced and respected leadership to help guide the path forward. I think I am that person. Thank you,
Senator. With that, we'll begin the questions in our debate, and the first question is from Mr. Elsey, and it goes to Ms. Marx.
Ms. Marx, with the elimination of the qualified immunity shield, the doctrine granting police immunity from civil suits, this issue has been the center of a statewide debate. When this is all said and done, do you think the citizens of Connecticut are safer after this bill was passed?
I absolutely think the citizens of Connecticut are safe after the police accountability was passed. My Senator Formica did not vote for it. I would have voted for it. The people that asked to have this bill passed were the people that were affected. The brown and black men and women for 200 years have been telling us how the police have brutalized them. I hear story after story after story, and we just continue to say we're going to do something about it, and yet we never did. So we let them talk. Senator Winfield, Robin Porter, Senator Nolan, they helped craft this bill because they know how it affects them. The qualified immunity, I'm a nurse. We all have to be held accountable for everything that we do, every job. I really hope that the people that are affected after the George Floyd killing can feel some peace and a little less trauma.
Senator Formica, you have 90 seconds to talk about the subject.
Thank you. It's clear that we have a problem in this country with race relations and police abuse of police authority. And it's important that abuse of police authority is rooted out wherever it exists. But I suggest that the vast majority of police who go to work each and every day in this country do for the right reasons. I agree with many of the things in that police accountability bill. The training, having social workers, police trained as social workers on the job, I think all of those things are good things, and we need to be better at what we do. However, the qualified immunity provision stopped me from voting for this bill. It will not only take good police officers and put them at risk, it will put communities in risk financially, which will crowd out dollars when they have to defend these frivolous lawsuits that will come as a result of this against good cops. Those dollars will crowd out necessary social services, education, and other expenses for communities. Right now, if a policeman or woman offers and does a malicious and willful act against anyone, they lose their immunity. So moving forward, this qualified immunity provision just harms the good policeman. The real sad thing is
I have to ask you to wrap up.
we missed an opportunity as a legislature to have a bipartisan conversation with this. Because without this immunity, I would have voted for that bill, and I think 90% of other people would have as well.
Thank you, Senator. And I'll give 45 seconds. The Senator went a little over, if we could, to kind of your thoughts on this first question.
Yeah, so it is clear that people have been waiting for years and years and years for there to be some kind of change with the police. Right now, there's not going to be any frivolous lawsuit. It has to be willing. You have to willingly kill somebody. I can't even imagine what people of color felt like when they saw George Floyd dying and that police officer's smile on his face. I don't have the same trauma as people that had, the black people that had to see that, but I cannot imagine what it was like time and time again to see that. They finally have an answer. When are you finally going to give them an answer? We've been kicking it down the road for years and years. I am so proud of our state legislature that they passed this bill.
Thank you. I'm going to do a follow. I'm going to give our candidates 1 minute each on this question. It's obviously an important one. There was a lot of agreement, and this is beginning with Ms. Marx. I mean, there was a lot of agreement on the bill. It was this immunity provision that caused the most controversy. You supported the Bacchus Hospital nurses in their recent job action, and that led to a tentative agreement on a contract. The police officers are also in unions, and they're claiming that they've lost some immunity privilege without even the opportunity to bargain and to discuss that. So if you could comment, as a candidate and as a union person on the fact that the unions felt they should have had the opportunity to negotiate on the question of immunity.
Yeah, I was told that the unions did go in to negotiate. They never called me. I never talked to, I talked to one of them, but it wasn't a very civil conversation. You know what? Anthony Nolan, Representative Nolan, he voted for that bill. He's a police officer of color. I'm not sure how many officers of color sit on the police union. So it would be interesting to see if all of the unions had true representation, then what they would think. My opponent does not vote for the police contracts. He voted against legislation that would have helped with municipal and state pensions. So I think moving forward, right now the police unions probably are a little disappointed in me, but I think once we get up to Hartford, they'll see that I truly do have their back, and they have to be accountable for when they do things that are wrong.
Another minute to you, Senator Formica, on this topic.
And the question is union negotiation in the bill?
Yeah, the question to your opponent was the fact that the police unions feel they should have had the right to negotiate rather than the legislation mandating a change that this should be subject to collective bargaining.
Yeah. You know, I think part of the problem of bringing a bill like this forward, comprehensive as it was, during a special session, was it limited the amount of time and conversation that it could have, not only by the unions to weigh in, but also legislators and the public didn't have the opportunity at public hearings to come and listen to all of the mechanics of the bill. And I thought a comprehensive bill like this could have been moved into the session beginning in January, when you have the opportunity to fully vet it. This qualified immunity section is not going to go into effect until June of 2021. So it would have been very easy to take that section out, get a bipartisan cooperation on this bill, and then move forward in the longer session starting in January with whoever's there to come to clear agreement on what's best to move forward. But we all agree we have to move forward.
All right, thank you. We'll go to another question. This will be from Julia Bergman, and it begins to Senator Formica, who will have 60 seconds.
This year saw a resurgence in the Black Lives Matter movement, which led to renewed calls for racial equality. Do you think the state has more work to do to abolish systemic racism? And if so, what specific steps do you think the General Assembly should take towards equality?
I think we as a nation and as a country and as a state have to do more work in terms of race relations. I think we have to be more mindful of each other's needs and to move forward and eliminate racism. There is no place for it. It should not be an opportunity. There are plenty of training programs within the state agencies that talk to potential legislators, potential employees about many things. And we have opportunities within the state to continue training, and we need probably to expand on that a little bit to focus on race relations and make sure that that's not an issue moving forward.
And Ms. Marx, you have up to 90 seconds on the topic.
Yeah, we have to be a lot more than mindful. Being mindful isn't get rid of the systemic and structural racism that we have in Connecticut and in the United States. We have to make sure that at every table, we have people that are sitting there, and that includes the table that I'm sitting at right now, that represent everybody in the community. I am chair of the New London Democratic Town Committee, and it was my charge to make sure that we got a Board of Ed and a City Council that looks like New London, and I am incredibly proud of the council that we have and the Board of Ed that we have. We can't just, listen to somebody's music and think that we understand their culture. We have to have a lot more than just simple 1-hour bias training on a computer. The leader of our nation has taken away all bias training out of all federal government. So that's taken about 20 steps backwards. We have to sit at tables with people that all look different, and women and men, and speak different languages, and we have to have hard conversations and talk about our biases. And once you start talking, you realize that we actually all have a lot in common. So we don't have to be mindful. We have to do some really difficult work.
Thank you. And you get another 30 seconds on this question, Senator.
Thank you, Paul. It's clear that we have to do more work. It's clear that people of color are uncomfortable in many situations that perhaps we don't notice. I've talked to people in my family who are of color and was enlightened by the opportunities that they're sharing with me about the things that are going wrong in the community and how we can do things better.
Thank you. Next question goes to you, Ms. Marx. For the first time in this election, because of the pandemic, the state is using widespread early voting by way of absentee ballot. Normally, Connecticut has among the most restrictive voting rules, with voting only on Election Day and absentee ballots only for sickness, military service, being out of state, or religious reasons. You have to have an excuse. Would you favor or oppose loosening voting laws to allow early voting, mail-in voting, or other changes post this experience? And you have a minute to respond.
Yep. First, I want to go one more thing, that if it took Senator Formica to have a person of color in his family, he's been a politician for 20 years. He should have had those conversations from the very beginning. We definitely need to have early voting. We need to change the absentee ballots so that it's not we have a no excuse absentee ballots, which Senator Formica did vote against. He likes to tell the people on his mail pieces that he voted for it, but he actually didn't. The only time he voted for no excuse absentee ballot voting was for the pandemic. There are people that move around a lot. Those are a lot of the people that I take care of. And when you move from one apartment to the next, you don't always have time to change your voter registration. And it makes it really hard on Election Day. I could talk about this for a long time, but my time is up.
Senator, you get up to 90 seconds on this. The question of whether Connecticut should move to join other states in allowing things like early voting, no excuse, absentee voting. Your thoughts?
Yes, and I would 100% agree with that. I think times have changed since 2014 when the people in the state of Connecticut overwhelmingly rejected a change in the absentee ballot conversation. I did vote against the early voting law that would have provided an opportunity to come before ballot and be a constitutional amendment. I did so because there was no detail to it. It just said, are you in favor of early voting? But there was no restrictions on where that voting would take place, how that voting would take place, unlike the absentee ballot voting, which is very restrictive, as you rightly pointed out, Paul. So those restrictions had to be changed for COVID, and I pushed my colleagues and was happy to vote to allow open absentee ballot as a result of that. And I think with our lives changing as it is in the last few years, opening up and being busier, I think early voting makes some sense, but I think the law that goes before the ballot box needs to be specific on what requirements will be in place with early voting, and I would happily support that.
Thank you. And you get another 30 seconds on this topic, Ms.
Yep.
Marx?
I mean, once again, one of the differences is you know exactly where I stand on issues. I believe in early voting. My opponent probably wants another study. We're not going to be able to have the exact details of the early voting written out. That's going to take the Secretary of the State's office months and months in order to do it. We need 2 votes for early voting. That is what the people want, and it's what the people deserve.
Thank you. The next question begins with Senator Formica, and question comes from Mr. Elsey.
Mr. Formica, as the chair of the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Caucus, yesterday Governor Lamont announced $9 million in relief for certain nonprofit arts organizations, including performing arts centers like this one, the Garde. Some of the hardest hit by the pandemic. The closure of these major community drivers affects downtowns, restaurants, hotels, tourism around the area. What will you do to support the sustainability and recovery of arts, culture, and tourism?
You get a minute to start.
Thank you very much, Lee, for the question. When I first got to the legislature, I founded the Arts, Tourism, and Culture Caucus, which was bipartisan. We have many people across the legislature join that in a bipartisan effort. That opened the conversation up to the importance of tourism, of arts and culture as far as the state government goes. Many of the legislators learned a lot about this industry as we move forward. I will continue to work with the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Caucus to try to raise awareness and pass legislation to move forward. As far as the $9 million, I had reached out to the commissioner of DECD some months ago to try to get the opportunity to help Mystic Aquarium, who was suffering with the $20 million hospitality relief fund. 6 or 7 would go to the aquarium, the rest would begin to feather its way out. I'm very glad to see the governor has done something, and I appreciate that.
Ms. Marks, your thoughts on tourism and state support for it?
Yep. We'd actually at 2 o'clock, Senator Formica and I were on a meeting with a forum with the Connecticut Alliance for the Arts. That might not be exactly the name of the group, but and Senator Austin said almost every legislator is on the tourism caucus because it affects almost every town in Connecticut. We're not going to be able to help the artists until we take care of this pandemic. We need to make sure that our public health is strong. We need to make sure that people wear masks. We need to make sure that we have testing and that we have contact tracing. And if we get rid of this virus and we stop the spread, then we'll be able to open up businesses and we'll be able to open up the arts venues. I love the arts, and they're incredibly important to the 20th District. I will do all I can when I get to Hartford to make sure that they get the money that they need in order to thrive. Everybody's going to need a lot of money this budget. So we're going to have to really think of ways to increase our revenues so that we can get as much money as possible to help the small businesses and the arts and the people that are really hungry.
Any further thoughts? You have 30 seconds, Senator.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, just to note that I was instrumental in developing the tourism fund, which is a portion of the hotel tax. And we know that there's not been a lot of people staying in hotels, so that that will be diminished. But we do need to increase our statewide marketing, and I agree that consumer confidence is the key to moving forward, safe and effective, and let the businessmen and women help move us forward so that we can continue to get this economy to grow, so we can get back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Julia Bergman, and it is to Ms. Marks.
Okay. This has to do with the state pier in New London and the development there. What benefit to the Connecticut taxpayer will result from converting the pier for use by the wind power industry?
Yeah, the wind power, the whole deal's been a little disappointing, and my opponent has been silent on it. Actually, he hasn't even been to New London for a town hall since Chris Soto was our state representative. The mayor is fighting hard all by himself to try to get a seat at the table. My opponent made sure that Bridgeport got the Park Wind deal, which is $840 million of economic development for Bridgeport, and he wrote a guest editorial with Mayor Ganem. I haven't seen him write editorial with Mayor Passero. So when I get to Hartford, I hope that I have made enough good relationships with the people there. I have been working on them for years now, and I hope that I will be able to help New London get more out of the pier than what Senator Formica has done.
Senator Formica, you get up to 90 seconds. Respond.
Yeah, the state pier, as managed by the Port Authority, is a couple of different tranches here. One is the management by the Port Authority was less than be desired. It was very bad and should not have ever happened. It happened because the authorization for the Port Authority was put into the budget, not vetted in the Transportation Committee, not vetted with public hearings. It was in the back of a budget. I am ranking member on the Energy Committee. I was a former chair. We pushed for 2,000 megawatts of wind as a procurement to move forward with our next generation of energy generation. Gas is limited in terms of getting through the pipe to come to Connecticut, causing price spikes in the winter months. Hydro-Quebec could not come down from Canada because transmission lines were blocked by northern states. So we have to do something. Nuclear was challenged and was threatening to close. We need the next generation of energy. Wind is it. I did write a letter with Mayor Ganem, and first I wrote a letter with Mayor Passero. Both cities need to be part of the solution in wind. The strength of Connecticut depends on the strength of our cities. Bridgeport won that bid, and they won it, the 804 megawatts that was out for bid, because they had a better price. So we have two people bidding against each other, and what happened was the ratepayers benefited.
Thank you. Another 30 seconds for your response.
Yeah, I've heard him say the ratepayers benefit a few times before, and it never comes to fruition. Eversource is also part of that Orsted deal. It always seems like when Eversource comes into our life, we get the outcome isn't that great. I still don't understand how Senator Formica, New London is in the 20th district, and I still don't know what you have done to help New London with this wind deal. You have been silent. We have not had one town hall about what is happening with energy and wind. You are the senior ranking member.
I'm going to do a 1-minute follow-up on this. We are in New London here. Should these plans for the wind turbine construction hub at State Pier move forward in the absence of a host community agreement between the City of New London and Eversource Orsted partnership? And do you see a role for a senator in trying to get that host community agreement reached? And we'll begin with you, and you have a minute, Ms.
Yeah,
Marx.
absolutely. We have to continue to work at it, and we have to work at bipartisan across the aisle and all together. We don't see Senator Formica here in New London. He has not been here to help us. New London has to have this wind deal, but we also have to try to tie some of Millstone into it, because Millstone has the lines that, and he's been on the Energy Committee for 6 years. He knows the words. He sat through meeting after meetings after meetings. He should be an expert on all of this. But yet I don't see where the wind is going to help us with Millstone, and yet we never have any plans coming out from him about what's coming in the future. So maybe he can tell us now.
Mr. Senator Formica, your response to the charge that you've let New London down on this issue. You have a minute.
I think it's clear the work that I've been doing for this wind turbine being built off the coast using New London's port as the launch pad. I have worked very hard to move generation after generation of electricity through the state of Connecticut with my work on electricity. I've been here. Mayor Passero and I met with the governor's chief of staff and a number of other people around the room to begin the conversation way back when about what can benefit the city here in the state of, the wind deal. We knew that that was really small numbers based on what was going to happen with the host agreement. The host agreement has gone back and forth a number of times. That agreement was between the mayor and Orsted Eversource. I was not involved in those things, nor was I asked. I offered many, many times to be involved in that and would happily do so. But we need this wind as the next generation. Millstone is on a 10-year power purchase agreement, and moving forward, we're going to need to replace some of that energy very soon.
Thank you. Next question is to you, Senator Formica, and it comes from someone who's watching this tonight on YouTube. And we've had several questions actually on this issue, and it's on the minimum wage. This questioner points out that a large percentage of our people in Connecticut work at a minimum wage. You opposed it, if memory is correct. So I'd like you to explain your position on the minimum wage and whether it should be re-examined given the economic difficulties that business is facing, or should we proceed as planned with increases in the minimum wage? And you get a minute to start this discussion.
Thank you very much. As probably one of the only job creators on this stage this evening, I understand what happens with payroll and the pressures of small business. Small business is 80% of the job creators here in this country, not big business, it's small business. My business, I have very few minimum wage workers. Everybody is above that. I'm able to do that. But there are many businesses throughout our state that cannot afford to pay minimum wage. And it's not just the minimum wage earner. It's what happens when that wage goes up $1, then the person who was making $12 an hour, they have to go up $1. And the person making 13, they have to go up $1. So the latter effect through the payroll of small businesses is really the cost driver. And I think market forces will take care of themselves. And minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage. It was meant to be a starting wage.
Thank you. You have 90 seconds on this topic?
So it's not meant to be a living wage, but unfortunately, Senator Formica, there are a lot of people, mostly women, that are making the minimum wage, that are taking care of children and trying to put food on the table. Spend one day with me, going from house to house, going into the low-income housing apartments, and the homemakers and companions that are frontline workers right now, that are taking care of our elderly and our disabled at home, and they didn't get to stay home and quarantine. They continue to go out, and they make $11 or $12 an hour with no benefits, with our taxpayers' money. And you've heard me talk about this for 10 years because you used to come to New London for town halls, and I've been talking about it for a long time. So those people deserve a living wage. Do you know, it's not small businesses. As soon as they passed the living wage, Yale New Haven Hospital and Hartford Healthcare both increased their lowest wage to $15 an hour. There were people working for Yale New Haven Hospital that were not making $15 an hour, and it changed their lives. Giving somebody an extra $40 or $80 a week is something that we won't even understand. So it's not just about your business, Senator Formica. It's about many people trying to put food on the table. You just don't understand what the people out there, low-income people, are struggling for every day.
Thank you, Senator Formica. You have another 30 seconds to wrap up on this topic.
Thank you very much. I would invite my opponent to come and work with me for a day and see all of the single moms that have worked with us for many years and work in this industry. This industry has been devastated by this pandemic, this industry that depends on people connection. And all of the single moms started out and now have paid for kids for college, have cars, have their own homes. So our industry is the main driver of that. So I invite my opponent to come and see the real effect of what's going on.
I've been a
and I
waitress
do come
before.
into New London, and I am in New London quite often.
All right, we have a couple invitations there. We'll let you guys work that out later, but we'll move to the next question, which is to Ms. Marx, and it's from Ms. Delsey.
Just ask a follow-up on that, Paul, if you don't mind.
Well, it's your turn, yes.
There are a lot of reports that if, in fact, the minimum wage were to go up and then continue to go up, eventually businesses would resort to technology. They would improve technology. Kiosks would be implemented. It's happening at McDonald's. It happens everywhere. Does that concern you at all when it comes to
Sure, it
raising the
does.
minimum wage?
When I go to McDonald's, I don't use the kiosk. When I go to Stop and Shop, I don't go to the I always go to the person. Stop and Shop is union jobs, so they're a little bit better than McDonald's. But are you saying that's an excuse for not giving somebody a living wage? No company should have a business plan if everybody that works for them cannot work 40 hours a week and put food on the table and a roof over their heads. You should not have to depend on the state. I mean, I know how you think. Why wouldn't you want everybody to make a decent wage? And then we wouldn't have to use state money, welfare money, Medicaid money to take care of them. The home care agencies make a lot of money. They're for-profits. The nursing homes are for-profits. They're making a lot of money off the backs of women and a lot of men too, and they deserve to have a living wage. And they need to change their business plan to make sure they can do that.
Senator Formica, I'll give you, the Senator, another minute. It's a follow-up question to the minimum wage, and particularly the potential that more businesses might be driven to use robotics for services if the wage keeps going up.
Thank you. I think we've already seen that. McDonald's is the biggest example that people see in front. People are using more and more electronics to supplant workers. Places like Seattle and others on the West Coast have shown a decrease in jobs as a result of an increase in minimum wage. Minimum wage, there should be a training wage. There should be a training wage to allow kids to get into the workforce and move forward. And not all jobs are 40-hour jobs. Not all people want 40-hour jobs. So schedule accommodations need to combine with training wages, with minimum wages, and with market-based wages that businesses can use to make sure that they can turn a profit to continue to pay the taxes that are in the state, to continue to pay the payroll, to continue to pay the benefits that are moving forward as part of everyday life in a small business.
Okay, Lee Elsey, I'll give you another question since that was by way of a follow-up. Do you have another
Sure.
question? And it would be to Ms. Marx.
Okay. Has Connecticut been restrictive enough since Sandy Hook concerning guns, ammo sales in the state? And if elected, what would you do differently, if anything?
You have a minute.
Yep. They have. And now you look at the schools and you think about the teachers that, wow, they not only have to, worry about the school shooter. If you're on the first floor, you can't open the windows because you're not allowed to open the windows. And now they have to worry about the COVID. So what's happening in the schools, being a teacher right now, they deserve a lot of credit from all of us, a lot of appreciation. If I get up to Hartford, hopefully I'll be up in Hartford, we have to be able to keep the guns out of people with mental illness who are a danger to themselves and a danger to others. That is something that I think we need to make a little bit stronger in our state. And also we have to really teach families how to keep their guns and their ammunitions locked up, because as a nurse, I've seen a lot of children with accidental shootings.
Senator Formica, you have 90 seconds on the
Thank
question.
you. Would you just repeat the crux of the question, please?
Has Connecticut been restrictive enough since Sandy Hook concerning guns and ammo sales in the state? And what would, if anything, what would you do differently?
Thank you very much, Lee, for that question. We have in Connecticut here some of the strictest gun laws in the nation as a result of that tragedy at Sandy Hook. I have a pretty poor record with CCDL in terms of my voting, as I did vote to restrict and lock up guns and storage at home when there's a teenager present. So I agree with my opponent on the fact that we need to do that. But I also think that mental illness is something that we have to continue to work on to make sure that we understand to keep guns away from people that can't have guns. So more money into addiction services, more money into mental illness, and I think that will begin the process of helping. There are many legal gun owners out there who are responsible and do the right thing when they have their guns and they use them for sport or hunting or whatever they use for. So more restrictions on those law-abiding citizens I don't think are the answer. I think we have to make sure we put money in mental illness, and we have to vote for reasonable restrictions on gun laws if we're going to add any more to what we have here in the country, in the state.
You get another 30 seconds if you need it on the Second Amendment.
Putting money in for mental illness is great, but you have to have health insurance first. So affordable health care is one of the most important things for me. We also have to work with the states surrounding us. If you can't buy ammunition here, you just go to Rhode Island and you can buy it. So I think, we have some amazing groups, grassroots organizations that are working to change some of the laws in our surrounding states, and then that will keep our states safer.
All right, with that, we'll go to another question. It's to Senator Formica, and it's from Ms. Bergman.
Governor Ned Lamont today announced that the state's daily COVID-19 positivity test rate is at 3%, the highest it's been since June 10th. Southeastern Connecticut in particular is seeing a spike in cases. In light of this increase in cases, do you agree with the governor's decision to proceed with phase 3 of the state's reopening plan? And also, do you agree with his decision to extend his emergency powers related to the coronavirus pandemic until February? Or do you think the General Assembly should have more of a say in the state's response to the pandemic and what restrictions are put in place?
Thank you very much for that question. I'm glad to see that the governor has done a good job up to date for his handling of the COVID crisis. That's why southeastern Connecticut and eastern Connecticut had some of the lower infection rates. Now that phase 3 is opened up, was on October 8th. I'm not sure if that's specific to the reason that we are seeing an increase in infections, but it could be part of it, and we have to be mindful moving forward, especially as more people are driven inside and not outside. So I think COVID fatigue, people are letting their guard down a little bit and not being mindful of wearing their masks and washing their hands and being sanitary the whole time. So I think that I agree with opening phase 3, but I think we have to be stricter as businesses and in places of business to make sure that we monitor it, and people have to do what they can to be mindful to wear their masks and wash their hands.
Ms. Marx, your thoughts on how we should be handling the pandemic and on the issue of the extreme executive authority the governor has been able to wield.
I think the governor's done a great job. You know, we didn't know very much. I think what happened in the nursing homes was incredibly sad. We didn't have the testing when all that happened. We had people only working 20 hours a week because the people that they work for won't give them 40-hour-a-week jobs because they don't want to have to pay them benefits. So many nursing home staff go from nursing home to nursing home in order to get enough hours to pay their bills. I think we should try to see if we can pass some kind of legislation just during COVID where the nursing homes let the staff work 40 hours in one nursing home and they should only be working in one nursing home. I think go into phase 3. The only way we're going to stop COVID-19 is by wearing masks, which I don't understand why you aren't wearing masks. It is airborne. It stays in the air. We don't know how long it stays in the air. We don't know how far it travels. It's not hard to wear a mask. We have to have our leaders be good examples. The leader at the top, President Trump, has done a terrible job with COVID-19. If he had started mask wearing in the very beginning and people didn't laugh about it and think it was funny and think it was stupid, then we would not be where we are now. We need testing, we need contact tracing, we need isolation. I have never heard my opponent be a big proponent of masks or do any kind of teaching about masks, how important they are, or talk about President Trump and the terrible job he has done dealing with COVID-19.
Thank you. You get another 30 seconds on this round of question.
Thank you very much. As far as the question regarding the length of time for the emergency powers, the governor, I disagreed with that. I thought it should be a month or 2 at the most until we see what's going on. He had made the decision to open schools, and I thought it made sense to move forward and see where we were after a month or 2. The legislature will be out of the loop for almost 1 year on February 9th with no collaboration or communication to the legislature, and who knows better than us having boots on the ground to find out what's going on and move the information forward so that we can solve this problem.
And Ms. Marx, I'll give Ms. Marx another 30 seconds. You really didn't address your thoughts on the legislature extending, or at least a committee of the legislature extending the executive authority for that period of time.
I think Governor Lamont should continue to have all executive authority when it comes to COVID-19. You can't wait for them to change if we're at 3% today. If we're at 10% tomorrow, we're going to have to change things quickly. I believe that's opening up the schools, especially with the hybrid models, was good. I don't think that's why we're having the spread. We're having the spread because people are getting together and eating and close together. My opponent said, let's just open up and see what happens in a month. That would have been disastrous. So I've not seen clear leadership from Senator Formica with the COVID-19 crisis at all.
Thank you. The next question goes to you, Ms. Marx.
There should be an opportunity to rebut that.
Okay, I'll give the senator another 30 seconds. He feels something he wants to rebut.
You know, I'm in business. We followed COVID protocols. We took this very, very seriously, very seriously. We're still waiting for a second plan for the nursing homes from the governor's office. We've been asking for a long time, what are we going to do to protect the nursing homes? They got a late start on that. So I think it's kind of ridiculous for my opponent to say that I'm not involved in the science of this by making sure that we wear masks. I've given away thousands upon thousands of masks to nursing homes and first responders throughout our district since this pandemic started. thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Marks, next question. Should Connecticut government get in the insurance business and offer a public health insurance option for those who can't find a good deal in the private sector? Can you get the first crack at that?
They
You have a minute.
absolutely should. It's sitting on Comptroller Lembo's desk. It's been sitting there for years. It never gets out of committee because the insurance companies threaten everybody if they do. We need to send people up to Hartford that can speak truth to power, and we need more competition. There are going to be so many people without insurance, never mind the ones that have lost their jobs, just the people that are unemployed from the casinos. But if this administration takes back the ACA and pre-existing conditions, all of those Connecticut's people, all of the people that are now got Title 19, they're not going to have it anymore. We are going to have thousands and thousands and thousands of people without health insurance. We have to start thinking about what we're going to do now. And the public option is there. It's ready to go. People are going to have lots of excuses not to do it. You tell somebody that they can't go to the hospital, they can't take their child to the hospital because they don't have insurance, and guess what? They don't care about those excuses.
Thank you. You have 90 seconds on the question of whether Connecticut should offer a public option.
Thank you very much. I don't think Connecticut should offer a public option, but I do think we should offer increased access to health care. The working middle class is feeling squeezed, and I would submit that it's the Democrats in the legislature that are stopping that. Senate Bill 328, which was proposed earlier this year, would have been put together so that we could reduce the cost of insurance premiums across this state. One, we use states' money to leverage federal dollars to create a reinsurance program without assessments on insurance companies. ACA put assessments on insurance companies, and that drove the price up because it added to the cost. Two, we need to reduce prescription drug costs by establishing a drug importation plan from Canada, working out a safe program that we can make sure we do that and drive the cost of prescription drugs down. Third, the bill contemplated controlling costs with benchmarking, following the example of Charlie Baker in Massachusetts, who has saved billions of dollars about creating this new health model. That bill didn't pass. It was brought forward but didn't pass. $19.5 million of state money would leverage about 63% of federal funds, and it would drive insurance premiums down on average 6 to 7% for all plans. ACA initially had a reinsurance program, but it ended in 2016. And that's when the cost skyrocketed for insurance in this country. We can do it. We can do it here in Connecticut. $20 million is an easy fix to get started, and I think we should do it as soon as we can.
30 seconds. So
Yep.
now your thoughts.
That's not going to help the people making $15, $16 an hour or that are unemployed. They're not going to be able to afford any kind of insurance. This public option has been sitting on Comptroller Lembo's desk. It can work, and I know the Working Families Party, it's one of their biggest initiatives this session. If I get elected up to Hartford, I will work very hard with them to make sure it gets passed because people need health insurance.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to another question, and it is to Senator Formica, and it's from Ms. Delsey.
I would say moving forward, moving into next year, the state is going to be in dire need of money. And there are varying levels of marijuana industry that the state, I would assume, is going to capitalize on. Are you for complete decriminalization of it? Are you for more medical legalization of it? Where would you sit on that scale as far as marijuana and making it legal?
Thank you very much for the question. I was the deciding vote to get a study bill out of the Appropriations Committee to move to the General Assembly for in-depth discussion on the legalization of marijuana. I think there's opportunities for us to be a leader in terms of what we need to do to legalize marijuana. I don't have a problem with that. It will generate some revenue, but there are issues with the mechanics of it. Right now, the medical marijuana community is having difficulty getting product. When you add increased recreational adult use, we're going to have more of a problem. And right now, Connecticut prohibits marijuana coming in supply from other states. California has a glut. there could be an opportunity to work together, to put a bill together that will satisfy the law enforcement community on testing for drivers, to make sure that children are protected, and there are drug laws that will. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Marks, you have 90 seconds to comment on the issue
Yep.
of marijuana legalization.
Yeah, I believe in the complete decriminalization of marijuana. And when it comes to the medical marijuana, I have so many patients, a lot of them older, that have been in pain their whole lives, and it has completely changed their lives. It's expensive. It's really only the people that have some money. Even if you get the license, it's expensive. So once again, it's the poor or the working class people can't afford to get the medical marijuana, and they remain in pain. So yes, I believe in it, but I think we have to do it. We have to make sure that those groups of people who have been most hurt by the war on drugs, people of color that have been locked up for having a joint in their car, whose entire neighborhoods were devastated from the crack epidemic, that we have to make sure that the people of color, the people most hurt by the war on drugs, which was a complete disaster, are the first people that are get the privilege, get the ability to be able to get the marijuana cannabis licenses.
And Senator Formica, any further thoughts on this topic? You have 30 seconds.
Thank you very much, Paul. The reason that we want to put marijuana legalization here in the state of Connecticut partly involves the tax revenue that is going to be generated as a result of that. We have to make sure that part of that study, there are equitable costs, but the medical marijuana community is having difficulty getting their supply, and I think we're going to have to do some serious look at a lot of questions and perhaps channel the adult use of marijuana through those channels that already exist. Thank you, and I'm sorry I went over.
Thank you. I mean, the candidates can wrap up as long as we're all not abusing our time limits. The next question is from Julia Bergman, and it goes to Ms. Marks.
Connecticut is one of the most segregated places in the country, both racially and economically. A series of articles published last year by the Connecticut Mirror and ProPublica showed the lengths to which local jurisdictions, including in the 20th District, have gone to block affordable housing. Is a systemic overhaul of local zoning regulations needed? And please explain why or why not.
Yep, and they absolutely are. We all were out protesting with Black Lives Matter. I was at the protest in New London. I was at the protest in East Lyme, Montville, Waterford. Everybody's out saying we need to get rid of structural racism. One of the very first ways we're going to do it is with housing. And affordable housing in Old Lyme or Old Saybrook is very different than affordable housing in New London, because you do it by the median income of the people that live there. So that's one of the first things that we have to do, is change how we calculate what affordable housing is. Then, when you decide to do it, it doesn't always have to be, it doesn't have to always be the big complexes. Let's be creative and do a study, and maybe put a lot of smaller houses on lots, because they don't have the water supply in order to have the big housing projects. People deserve a good place to live, and we need to start changing the way we do it in Connecticut.
Thank you. Your thoughts on the affordable housing issue as expressed in the question, Senator?
Thank you very much, Paul, for that question. As first selectman of the town of East Lyme, I'm very mindful of what happens with zoning in small communities. We developed and redeveloped the downtown area to try to create a business zone and a residential enjoyment zone in our downtown. And we put affordable housing 1 block off Main Street, Niantic, in an effort to bring people into downtown. We need to be creative when it comes to bringing affordable housing to communities. We don't need the state to steamroll over communities and say where it needs to be done and create problems of people saying, we don't want that there. What we need to do is to find out in discussions where communities want to place these affordable housing, such as off Main Street in downtown Niantic. A lot of places, a lot of small towns do not have the services, the utilities, the transportation infrastructure, or other services to support affordable housing. Bankers don't often give mortgages to affordable housing. That was part of the problem we saw here. So we have to look at cost drivers, we have to look at location, and we have to work with and be partners with our small towns to make sure that we can find housing solutions for those people who need it.
And you'll get another 30-second, Ms. Marks. And if you might address, if I heard right, it sounds like the senator would not support overruling of local zoning rules in order to make affordable housing possible. And perhaps in your last 30 seconds, we could get your position.
What Senator Formica just said is what people of color have been hearing for the last 200 years, including the banks. Maybe we could use our public green bank to help fund some of the housing, which Senator Formica did cut from his budgets when he likes to say that he balanced a budget. We have to work with the towns. We have to tell the towns they have to have a certain amount of affordable housing, which we already tell them they do, but they don't. So we have to help them be creative. Basra doesn't want a high-rise affordable housing in their neighborhood, but maybe we can do some small little ranch houses that, and I go into people's houses, Paul, and they're living in a terrible apartment that they're paying $700 for. They could pay a mortgage for $700.
Thank you. I'm going to have
All
to ask you out. For this next question, I'm going to give each of the candidates a minute, because it's not so much a debate question. We've had several questions come in. Wanting to hear your views on the divisiveness of the level of politics right now that is concerning a lot of people, of how angry our politics have gotten. And we've got several people texting. What are the views of the candidates on the level of divisiveness we're seeing in this election cycle? I'll give them both a minute. We can start with your thoughts on that, Senator Formica, and then we'll hear from Ms. Marks.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you to the people who texted or emailed that in. The level of divisiveness in this country has increased over the last few years. I've been coming up on my 30th year as an elected official, working in East Lyme, and now the past 6 years in the state legislature. I have worked in a bipartisan manner and have always open to conversation and discussion. The divisiveness that it's occurring not only in this campaign at the national level is disgraceful, and it should not continue. We should be talking about policy disagreements or agreements, and we should be talking about the ability to agree to disagree, and to do so without being disagreeable. There is no need to have any type of this divisive conversations, because it just gets in the way of solutions. And we need to come together and find solutions. Maybe a middle ground, maybe it's a little of this or a little of that, but we need solutions, and we need to do it together.
And your thoughts on those questions from our viewers?
We need to make sure Donald Trump does not get reelected to be our president on November 3rd. The divisiveness started with him. It continues with him. My opponent will not have the courage, does not have the courage to say that that is where it comes from. It comes from Donald Trump. When he said to stand back and stand by to the Proud Boys, that was white supremacy. If you do not bring up white supremacy and say it is wrong, then you're helping racism. I honestly don't know how Senator Formica cannot say that this is coming from President Trump, and it's because he doesn't want to lose that base of his supporters, no matter how wrong it is and how hurtful it is to so many people in the 20th district.
I'm going to have to give you, if you want, another 30 seconds to respond. Your name was brought up, Senator Formica.
I have stood up on many occasions and criticized many of the things that our president has done and said over the last 4 years. So I'm not afraid at all to criticize anything that he says or anyone else. But as I recall, the other side has not been so pleasant either. Not to take blame away from anybody, but the divisiveness needs to stop. It needs to stop at the national level, and it needs to stop trickling down here at our state level, and it's trickling into local politics. It's okay to disagree on policy, but we need to do it reasonably.
Okay, with that, we get to go to our closing statements, and our candidates will have 1 minute, and the first closing statement will be from Paul Formica.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you to the Day, Paul and Julia, Lee and the Siegels and the Garde Arts Theater for hosting us tonight. We live in times challenged by a terrible pandemic, in times that have disrupted our economy and our way of life. Most importantly, we are challenged on how we live with and treat each other. Now, more than ever, we need leaders in Hartford that have the experience not only to lead, but to communicate, to collaborate, and are willing to work together, to focus on people, not politics. Leaders willing to stand on principle and integrity, service, and compassion. I have a proven record of that service and of being able to work bipartisanly to benefit our district and our state. Visit formicaforsenate.com and hear not my voice, but the many voices of support from our district. I thank you for this great opportunity to serve as your state senator, and I ask for your vote and continued support on November 3rd. Thank you, and be safe.
And you have 1 minute, Martha Marx, for your concluding statements.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, for hosting, and everybody out there watching. I'm afraid that my opponent is not about people over politics. He's about politics over people. He still has not denounced President Trump. And until he does that, we do not really know where he stands on many issues. He voted against the $15 minimum wage. He voted against paid family medical leave. He voted against the police accountability bill. He voted against posting of safe staffing in nursing homes. We didn't even get to that one. And he voted against no excuse absentee ballots. All of that is political. He voted party line with his party. I am a person that advocates for people. I fight for people. I am tenacious. I know the 20th District. I want to get up there and work for you and make sure that you have affordable housing, that you have living wages, and that you have safe environments. And we didn't even talk about Eversource. I want to make sure that we put consumers over corporations. I hope you vote for me, Martha Marx.
Thank you. Thanks to our candidate. That concludes our debate. We thank you for watching. I want to thank the League of Women Voters who supplied our timekeepers. And we again thank the Garde for hosting this event. And we ask you to join us tomorrow for the 18th Senate District debate between Republican incumbent Senator Heather Summers and her Democratic challenger, Bob Stachin. Good night.
Thank you.